ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमो ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna, we welcome all the devotees to our weekly program. We are here on chapter 7, last part of chapter 7, and we'll quickly go through the synopsis of the previous class. We saw 14 different examples of Lord Krishna represents not just the source of everything, but also the essence of everything. If you remember 7.4, 7.5, he mentioned how all the material elements come from him. And then he says how even the modes of nature themselves, which control everything in the material world, are themselves controlled by Lord Krishna. And then he says that those people who are controlled by the modes of nature, they do not understand the position of Krishna. And I remember one of our participants asking this question, that why is the word inexhaustible mentioned in that shloka? Because Lord Krishna is saying anything that is there in the material world is exhaustible, it is temporary, and because I am beyond the material world, because I am inexhaustible, it is very difficult for people to understand my position. Somebody who has not ever experienced infinity, somebody who's always experienced finite things, the concept of infinity, it becomes difficult. Is anybody a professor of mathematics here? Okay, so seems nobody's there, but think about it. If you want to present to your child the concept of infinity, and your child will say, what is infinity? How will you present to it? Because anything around, anything visible, anything that is tangible in this world is finite. There is nothing infinite in this world. And that's why it's a big challenge to explain to little kids the concept of infinity. Something similar Krishna is saying. Somebody who's in the material world always may not be able to understand the position of Lord Krishna unless we understand it in proper parampara or we understand it directly from Lord Krishna. And then Krishna was saying, who can cross over this insurmountable illusory energy? Only those who surrender to Lord Krishna, the master of the illusory energy. And if the master indicates to the illusory energy that please spare this one person, don't catch him within your ropes, then it is possible that we can escape. Otherwise, it's almost impossible. It is insurmountable. We saw the example of the ocean. Nobody can cross over the ocean. Only when comes and picks us up from the ocean, then it is possible that we can escape from the ocean. Okay. Then 7.15, Krishna spoke about 4 kinds of people who do not surrender to Lord Krishna. Anybody can tell me those 4 kinds of people one by one?
The mood are grossly foolish.
Yeah, the first one was Mudha or grossly foolish. Second one from anybody else?
Naradhama, Maya Aparashrana,
Yes,
and
very
I think
good.
Asuram Bhava.
All 3 mentioned by you. What are others? Okay, so Naradhama was lowest of mankind. Then Maya Aparita Jnana was those whose knowledge is stolen by illusion. And then the fourth one was those who partake of the atheistic nature of the demons. The demons don't want to surrender to God. The demons want to run a parallel government. They don't want to accept the laws that were made by the Supreme Lord. They want to create their own laws. Ravan wanted to build a staircase to heaven. And he said, I'll make the staircase in such a way that those who do sinful activities, they will go to heaven. And those who do pious activities, those who do punya karma, they will be sent to hell. He wanted to change the whole system upside down. And he was never successful, of course. But that's the whole point, that they want to change the existing laws and they want to twist them as per their liking. Remembers the word that Krishna used for such people? Krishna used a particular word for these people. With all four categories, he described all four in one word. If you have the Gita in front of you, he used the word Dushkritina, yes. Now I'll request all those who are sitting with their Gita in their hands, you can go to 4.7 or 4.8. I guess it is 4.8. Can you read 4.8? Somebody else can go to 4.8 in the Gita and read the Gita 4.8.
Prabhuji, is it Paritranya Sadhunam Vinashaya Cha Dushram Dharma Samstap Panarthaya Sambhavani Yoge Yoge?
Yeah. So there Krishna uses the words Paritranaya
Sadhuna.
Yeah. And then next he says Vinashaya Cha
Dushkrita.
That Dushkritam you can see in 7.15. In 7.15 also Krishna uses the word Namam Dushkritina Muda Prapadyante Naradama. So he's saying these Dushkritis, these people who are indulging in wrong activities, who are indulging in wrong planning, improper behavior and all that, four kinds of people do not surrender to me. And in 4.8, Krishna has mentioned Vinashaya cha Dushkritam. So the same word Krishna uses. It means there are always these kind of people who won't surrender to Krishna. And that's why Krishna has mentioned already that one of the purposes for which Krishna appears in this world is to protect those who are pious, protect those who actually obey the laws that are made by him. They actually cooperate with the whole system Krishna has made. And Krishna destroys those who do not become a part of the system. So this is something that I wanted to point out. Okay, 4 kinds of people who surrender to Lord Krishna. Anybody would like to mention?
Prabhuji, the distressed, the desire of wealth.
One at a time. Yes, the first one is distressed. Anybody else?
Another is desirous of wealth.
Yes, very good. Seekers of wealth, desirers of wealth. Third one?
Inquisitive.
Perfect. Inquisitive. Those who are curious. They see the temples, they see there is some pravachan going on, they see some kirtan is going on, and they just said they're curious. They want to know. They are not convinced, but they're curious. Anybody else who's not spoken till now? The fourth category?
Searching for absolute truth.
Yes, Mataji already spoke.
Yeah, nobody was saying anything.
You know what? If we don't speak about 4 kinds of people who surrender to Lord Krishna, then what are we going to speak about? This is the whole essence of the Gita that we are discussing. 4 kinds of people who do not surrender to Krishna, 4 kinds of people who surrender to Lord Krishna. So I was making... Anyways, so this is where we stopped and we'll go ahead from here. The 7.17. Tesham Gyani Nityayuktaha Eka Bhaktir Vishishya Priyo Hi Gyani Priyaha. So Tesham means of people whom Krishna has spoken about. Krishna spoke about the kinds of people who surrendered to him in 7.16. So he's making a reference to them. And he's saying, out of these who surrender to me, the one who is in full knowledge and who is always engaged in pure devotional service is the best. Look at the words that Krishna is using. Tesham Jnani Nitya Yukta. Nitya Yukta means they are always Yukta, they are always connected to me. Tesham Jnani Nitya Yukta. And then he says, Eka Bhaktir Vishishyate. Eka Bhaktir Vishishyate means they are always engaged only in one activity, that is, whatever they are doing, whenever they are doing, they will do it as a service to me. In a very loving way, they do it for me. Eka Bhaktir Vishishyate. And because they are always engaged in pure devotional service to me, they are the best. And Priyo hi Jnaninyo Atyartham. He is very priya to me, such a devotee who's always thinking about me, who's always trying to serve me, who's always trying to please me, who's trying to share my knowledge with others. Is very dear to me. Priyo hi Jnaninyo Atyartham. Aham sa cha mama priya. For I am very dear to him and he is very dear to me. So Krishna is making a claim that because I am dear to him, such a devotee who is very rare actually is also dear to me. So those four categories of people who surrendered to Krishna, one was distressed, one was seeker of wealth, and one was inquisitive. These three actually come in the category of Sakama Bhakti. Sakam Bhakti means they want something from Krishna. Somebody wants relief from the pain in their life. Somebody wants some wealth from Krishna, and somebody get a deeper understanding about life from Krishna. But the fourth one, Jnani, fourth one is actually somebody who is already situated in knowledge, and he will do Nishkam Bhakti. So that is the difference between these four. That the first three want something from Krishna, and that's why they will serve him. And the fourth person does not want anything from Krishna, he just wants to serve Krishna. So Krishna is saying, out of those who are selfish and those who are selfless, the selfless is somebody who is very priya, who is very dear to me. And that is what we also need to know, that yes, anybody who comes to Krishna likes them. But if somebody comes to Krishna out of a selfless motive, then Krishna likes that person more. Okay, so chess is a game of choice. Every step you need to do some analysis in your mind. Sometimes at an international level, when they play chess, it is possible that players are stuck up at the same position for something like 3 days. For 3 days, 8 hours a day when they are playing, the players won't move, and the players are just looking at that board and they are thinking what to do. Because in chess, any move that you make is irreversible. You can't undo it. You go ahead or you go back. Whatever you do, once you have taken a decision, you can't go back on that and say, oh, I made a wrong decision. If you lose some of your players, then you lose them forever. You can't tell them, can I exchange some of other players for this one player that I lost? You can't speak like that. So that's why every move that you make in chess has to be made very seriously, has to be made very thoughtfully. And similarly, so actually life is also a game of choice. What decisions we take today will affect what happens tomorrow. Certain decisions that we took in our childhood days will affect us today, and certain decisions that we take today will affect us tomorrow. And in chess, none of the decisions that we take are reversible. What we did when we were in school is irreversible. What we did in college is irreversible. If we don't take certain decisions in our life in the fear of taking a wrong decision, that itself becomes a wrong decision. Abstaining from taking a decision also becomes a wrong decision. It's not that only when I take a wrong decision, it's a wrong decision. In this way, we need to play, but we have a choice that we need to play in a very thoughtful way. Then it is quite possible that we lose out. So we are free to make our choices in life, but we are not free to choose the consequences of those choices. Once a decision is taken and I take a choice to speak to somebody in a very harsh way, then what happens next is beyond me. The kind of hurt that I cause to people, and sometimes it is possible that that person might also have a revenge mentality against me, or that person, instead of having a revenge mentality against me, can actually feel very bad, can actually feel very depressed, and I can't choose all that. So, just like in a game of chess, in life also we are free to make our choices, but we aren't free to choose the consequences of those choices. So, my dear friends, if life is a game of choices, then who can choose wisely? It's all a game of choices, and you need to make very thoughtful choices. You need to make wise choices. So, this is a question for you: who can choose wisely?
Person who has a knowledge and the person
Yes, you are right.
and the person
Somebody who has knowledge, yes, and especially knowledge of the consequences. If you make blind choices in your life, you don't think over it, and every time you want to make some important choice in your life, you toss a coin, heads and tails, and just heads comes, you go for a particular choice. Just because tails come, you go for a particular. Imagine what kind of chaos will be there in your life, what kind of disasters will happen in your life. So, chess, I was mentioning about how sometimes the players are stuck up at a particular position for something like 3 days. So, why is that person stuck up at that position for 3 days? Because he's analyzing, he's evaluating. At this situation, if I put forward this piece, then what will happen? What are the dangers that are awaiting me? What could happen? And in this way, very thoughtfully, after evaluating the different possibilities, at a particular time, convinced that yes, I need to make this choice, even if it is dangerous, but at least it is a calculated risk, then he takes a choice. Similarly, in life also, when there are so many decisions to be taken, when there is so many choices to be taken, who can choose wisely? One who has knowledge of the consequences. If I take a certain decision in my life and I am not aware of the consequences, I just take a random decision. I study for my exams. I don't know what happens to people who don't study. I don't know what happens to people who are unsuccessful in life. I never met anybody who's unsuccessful in life. I don't know what kind of pain people have to face in life when they take wrong decisions. I can take wrong decisions. I may not evaluate what is right, what is wrong. I just take whimsical decisions, and my life can be full of one disaster after another. That's why it's very important that when we have proper knowledge, when we have proper understanding of the consequences of our decisions, then we can choose wisely. Anybody knows this story which is there on the screen?
yeah, Prabhuji.
You'll have to raise your volume a little bit. Can you tell us this story?
Prabhuji, when Arjun and Dhritarashtra, I'm sorry, Prabhuji. I know the story, but I didn't correct.
Okay, not able to hear you, Prabhuji. Maybe somebody else can speak.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Yeah, please.
So I think just before the war in Kurukshetra, Arjuna and Dhritarashtra both went to ask for Duryodhan. Sorry, both went to ask for Krishna's help, and Duryodhan was sitting at Krishna's headrest, waiting for him to get up, and Arjuna was sitting at his feet. So when Krishna got up, he first saw Arjuna. And he said, because I saw you first, I'll give you the choice, opportunity first to ask. And Duryodhan was like pretty mad and angry at it, but he protested, but he said, oh, what can I do about it? But anyway, so Arjun got the opportunity first, and he said, I would. The choices were either you get me or you get my army, which is like the most powerful army ever. So Arjuna said, I want you to be, with me in the war. And Duryodhan pretended that, oh, I'm very upset, but actually he was very happy because he got the big army. So that is kind of the story.
Perfect. Thank you so much. You spoke everything that was supposed to be spoken. So one interesting thing about this is, here is the difference not just between Arjun and Duryodhan. Here is the difference between two mentalities. Duryodhan represents those people who evaluate everything by quantity. They talk of quantity, they talk of numbers. And Arjun is somebody who does not evaluate anything by quantity, he evaluates by quality. So he says, because Krishna had already taken a decision, he is not going to fight in this war. Even if he participates in this war, even if he goes to any of these sides, he's not going to fight. He's not going to lift any weapons. That was the decision. So on one side, there is one Krishna who is not going to fight. On the other side is this huge army which is going to fight, and which is, as you rightly mentioned, one of the most powerful armies on the earth. So now the question comes, if Krishna asked Arjun, okay, you get the first choice, and Arjun says, don't even ask me this question. If you ask me this question, in one sense, it's like an insult to me. All I have, all I had, and all I will have in the future is only you. I never wanted anybody else. I never want anything else. If you are with me, I have everything. And Krishna says, think about it. If you don't know, I need to remind you that I'm not going to fight. What will you do? And Arjun says, victory and defeat is not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for you, and if you are with me, if victory comes, it is victory, and if defeat comes, it is by your will, it is by your decision. So even the defeat is victory for me. And if you are not there with me, defeat is defeat, but even victory without you is defeat for me. So Arjun represents those of us who choose not based on quantity, we choose based on what is right and what is wrong, what is beneficial and what is not beneficial. Sometimes the road or the decision that is beneficial is sometimes troublesome. There are hardships involved on the path which is the right path. And sometimes the road that is non-beneficial is a very easy road. And sometimes the temptation is, should I choose the easy path or should I choose the difficult path? Or should I choose the beneficial path and the non-beneficial path? And Duryodhana represents those people who choose the easy path, even though it is non-beneficial. And Arjun represents those people who will choose the right path, the beneficial path, even if it is a difficult path. So this is the whole point here. And in one sense, Arjun chose Krishna. Arjun had a possibility to choose the army of Krishna. But he said, no, I don't want the army of Krishna. I choose Krishna. So the question for all of you is, would it be the same situation with Krishna not being with Arjun in the battle of Kurukshetra? I'll just get some water for myself and you can answer. Yes, any replies from anybody of you? Think about it, Arjun does not choose Krishna. Arjun chooses the whole army of Krishna. How would be the situation today?
Prabhuji, the situation is the opposite.
So think about it, that one thoughtful choice by Arjun. That one thoughtful choice by Arjun is so important. It is so critical. What happened on that day in that small bedroom, where Krishna was sleeping, there are only three people there. Duryodhana is there, Arjun is there, and Krishna is there. And Arjun went for a choice. He chose Krishna. This scene that we are seeing on the screen right now has changed the history of this world. What if on that particular day Arjun was a little drowsy? Arjun did not take proper sleep the previous night. And Arjun's, he's like half dazed. And Krishna says, "What do you want?" And he says, "I don't know. Well, let me look for a coin." And he goes for heads and tails. And he chooses the army of Krishna. Today, the history of the world would have been drastically different, would have been poles apart. So think about it. One thoughtful, proper decision by Arjun, and the nature of this world has changed. Krishna went on the side of the Pandavas. He gave advice to Arjun. The Gita was spoken. Here we are discussing that Gita. So you can just imagine what is the power of one single thought. So I wanted to point out that this is Arjun's active choice. This is Arjun's choice. It did not happen automatically. Krishna did not automatically go to the Pandava side. He wanted them to choose. And my dear friends, in all of our lives, this is what is going to happen. This is Krishna's style of functioning. Krishna will not automatically come on our side. Krishna is not that type of a person. He will guide you, he will inspire you, he will motivate you, but finally he will make you take the decision. So in our lives also, there will be many situations where Krishna will ask us, do you want me or do you want my power? Do you want me or do you want my money? Do you want me or do you want my fame? And if we are real students of the Gita, if we really understand what is the dynamics of the relationship between Arjuna and Krishna, then we will say, I don't want your money, I don't want your name and fame, I don't want anything belongs to you, I want you. I want you to guide me. I want you to be with me whenever I'm supposed to take all the important decisions in my life. So this is something which is very important for us to understand. It was Arjun's active choice. And because it was Arjun's active choice, that's why Krishna also actively chose Arjun to be an instrument of his will. Krishna wanted to do dharma sthapana. He has already mentioned in 4.7. I have come here yada yada hi dharmasya. And Krishna says, I want to establish this dharma, so I need an instrument. And that's why out of the many instruments that were available, Krishna chose the best instrument, that is Arjun. So the crux of the story is, when we choose Krishna, then Krishna too chooses us. Krishna may not choose us. So we have to actively, in every situation in life, every time there is a choice, we have to choose Krishna. We have to choose Krishna's advice. We have to choose Krishna's guidance. The power to choose is our inherent quality and will never be lost. Nobody, including the Supreme Lord Krishna, is willing to take away the power of choice from our life. So in no situation, never accept from any person the philosophy that everything in life is fixed and there is never a choice. Please don't accept that philosophy. As per what the Gita is mentioning, Ramayana is mentioning, Mahabharata is mentioning, all the Vedas they are mentioning is always human life is about a series of choices and it all depends on us. Okay, 7.18. Udaraha sarva evaite jnani tvatmaivam matam asthitah sahi yuktatma mamevat nutamam gatim. How many of you know the word udara in Marathi?
Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah, what does it mean?
Generous.
Generous. In Marathi it means generous. In Hindi, anybody knows this word udar? you by your silence are telling me not to ask questions. Udara basically means generous, magnanimous, and it comes from the Sanskrit word. So here he's saying Udaraha Sarva Evaite. And Krishna is talking about all the different types of devotees. Whether they are seekers of wealth, whether they are inquisitive, or whether they are those who are situated in knowledge. Krishna is saying, yes, the Jnani, those who are situated in knowledge, those who choose me, those who understand my position and they choose me, he is very priya, he is very dear to me. But Arjun, I also want to tell you, it's not that I look down upon the other three. Sarva, all these four, all these devotees are undoubtedly magnanimous souls. ये सब लोग है ना उदार है. They are very magnanimous. So my question to you before we go ahead is, who is begging from whom? The devotee is begging from Krishna for help, or Krishna is begging from the devotees for help?
Devotees, Prabhuji.
Yeah. So it's very interesting that Krishna calls all these devotees as magnanimous, and when a rich gives to a beggar, who is magnanimous? The beggar is magnanimous or the donor is magnanimous?
Donor.
Yeah. So always the donor is magnanimous, and here, these people, four kind of people who surrendered to Krishna in 7.16, they came to Krishna asking for help. They said, Krishna, you are so powerful. Krishna, you are so rich. Krishna, you have so much knowledge. Please give to us. And instead of they calling Krishna as Udara, Krishna is calling them as Udara. So this is very interesting about Krishna. So he is calling all these kinds of devotees as Udara. Why? Why does he do that? Because Krishna is saying all these devotees are magnanimous from me. By approaching me, they give me an opportunity to re-establish a relationship with them. So Krishna is saying, I had a relationship with all the Jivatmas, they are my children, and somehow they no longer have a relationship with me. Many of these people in the material world, they somehow made a wrong choice. They took a choice to go away from me. They took a choice to break their relationship with God. They took a choice to choose the power of God over God. And since that day, there is a distance between Krishna and these kind of people. Now, because of some good fortune, maybe they met devotees, maybe they heard the Gita, maybe their mother and father gave these samskaras that Krishna, we need to have a relationship with Krishna, any of these ways. But due to some situation, the artha, distress, the artharthi, seekers of wealth, and the jigyasu, the inquisitive, this people, they come to Krishna. And Krishna is saying, when they come to me, then they will ask from me. And they are very eager from me. And then I'll give them something. And when I give them something, they will become happy. And will tell their friends, I went to Krishna, I asked for some wealth, and Krishna gave me so much wealth. I asked for some shelter, and Krishna gave me shelter. And not only Krishna gave me wealth, but Krishna also gave me some guidance. Through his devotees, through his Gita, through his own life. Krishna has wonderful pastime, Krishna has wonderful stories, and every story is so much full of for years and years. So I went to Krishna for something which is temporary. I went to Krishna for something like wealth. And that wealth can be stolen, that wealth can be demonetized, that wealth can be just taken away. But in addition to that temporary wealth, whenever I approach Krishna, Krishna always gave me something that is permanent. Krishna gave me some guidance, Krishna gave me knowledge, Krishna gave me a deeper understanding of life. That is one big advantage of going to Krishna. Whenever you go to Krishna, you might ask for something that is temporary, But Krishna will always not only give you the temporary, but Krishna will always give you something permanent. And when you receive something permanent from Krishna, you become satisfied. We will never ever become satisfied by receiving something from Krishna that is temporary. We have been receiving so many temporary things from so many people. If that would have given us satisfaction, then we would never have come to Krishna. Temporary things do not give satisfaction to the permanent soul. And that is why Krishna is saying, when they come to me, I also give them something permanent in addition to what they ask for from me. And when they receive from me, they derive great satisfaction. And they tell people, oh, whenever I go to Krishna, I not only receive what I want, but I also receive what I need. And in this way, by giving and receiving, there is a relationship that is again formed between Krishna and those who made a wrong choice before. And whenever there is a relationship with Krishna, Krishna is very happy. Why? Because Krishna knows the root cause of all the problems in our life is not having a relationship with Krishna. Just because we did not have a relationship with Krishna, we are in such a big, long. As long as Arjun had a relationship with Krishna, although he underwent difficulties, but those difficulties never ever troubled him. This is something very interesting. So in our life, if we have a relationship with Krishna, difficulties might come, but they will never ever be successful in troubling us. So all these devotees are magnanimous because Krishna is not looking at what they are asking from him. Krishna is looking at the fact that they are giving me a chance to form a relationship with them. And Krishna is just so happy. Oh, I'll again form a relationship with them. I'll again form a relationship with them. He says, Udar. They are so magnanimous. They are so udar. They are so generous that they are giving me an opportunity to re-establish a relationship with them. So sometimes it happens. Usually the beggar thanks the donor. But sometimes the donor also thanks the beggar. So all of us are beggars, and many times we go to Krishna, and Krishna, when he gives to us, he's thanking us. He's saying, thank you so much that you didn't go here and there. You came straight to your Father. You came straight to the Supreme Lord. You came to me. And when a devotee asks something from Krishna, when a devotee asks something from Lord Ramchandra, when a devotee asks something from Lord Narsimha, when a devotee asks something from Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Lord has gratitude to us for asking it not from anybody temporary in this world, but we choose to ask from Krishna, who is the right person to ask. So this is something very interesting about Krishna, that if you ask from Krishna, Krishna is grateful to you for asking from him. So everything that God does, everything that Krishna does, he might give you money, he might not give you money. Somebody who came to Krishna, Krishna gave him prosperity. Sudama. It's quite possible that Krishna took away his prosperity. In the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam, there is the story of one Avanti Brahman. And this Avanti Brahman was very rich. He was very rich. But at one point of time, Krishna took away everything from his life. And sometimes Krishna gives you, sometimes Krishna takes away. But always remember this with deep conviction. Whatever Krishna does in your life is always to enhance the quality of his relationship with you. When will Krishna snatch away from you? When Krishna sees all that I have given to this devotee is actually forming a wall between me and him. All the opulence, all the wealth, all the health, and everything that I gave to this devotee is actually distancing this devotee from me. In that situation, Krishna takes away all those things from us. And because of certain situations, if we are not rich, if we are not intelligent, if we are not powerful, if we are not beautiful, if we are facing many problems, and because of those problems, we are increasing our distance from Krishna. And you go to Krishna and you tell him, Krishna, see, I don't have any wealth. How will I worship you? How will I come close to you? I don't have any intelligence to understand the Gita. I want to understand the Gita. please give me a lot of intelligence, please give me a lot of wealth, please give me a lot of power, please give me a lot of influence. But why do I want all this? I want all this so that I can come closer to you. Krishna will give you. So in that sense, Krishna is very unpredictable. Sometimes Krishna gives, sometimes Krishna takes away. But one thing very predictable about Krishna is all that he does is for enhancing the quality of his relationship with us. Think about a good mother. Many of you are mothers and many of you are fathers. On a child's birthday, you might give him a good gift, and your child will say, "Wow, my papa is very nice, my mother is very nice." And next day, he does some nonsense, and you tell him this is not the right thing to do, and he keeps on doing it repeatedly. It is quite possible that that same mother and the same father who rewarded the child with equal enthusiasm punish the child. At that time, the child should not think, "Oh, my papa and my mummy, they were loving me so much, and today something has happened. They are behaving in a strange way." Actually, if he asks, then the mother will say, "My love for you was exhibited by giving you the gift, and my love for you is exhibited by snatching away that gift." Why? Because giving that gift made you behave in an improper way. So it is not about giving the gift, it is not about snatching away the gift, it is about reforming your thoughts, it is about reforming your behavior. And because Krishna is not impressed by our words, Krishna goes to the root of the problem. Krishna looks at our thoughts, Krishna looks at our consciousness. That's why a large number of people in the material world choose not to serve Krishna. Because you can speak big words to Krishna, but Krishna is not looking at words, Krishna is looking at your heart. And you cannot fool Krishna. Anybody else, everyone else, if you speak big words, if you speak sugar-coated words, they actually fall for it. They actually believe you. But Krishna is not one of those, and that's why many people know this. Oh, this Krishna, you cannot fool him, and I cannot get my things done from him. So better I worship somebody else so that I can at least get quick results. But with Krishna, you have to be really sincere in your heart. That is when he rewards you. So it's very important for us to understand this about Krishna. Next shloka. Bahul janmanamante jnanavan mam prapadyate vasudevah sarvamiti samahatma sudurlabha. After many births and deaths, he who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes and all that is. Such a great soul is very rare. Can any one of you open 6.45?
Prabhuji, Prayatnad Yata Manas
Yeah, can you read the
Yogi
English
and
translation?
when the yogi engages himself with sincere endeavor in making further progress, being washed of all contaminations, then ultimately achieving perfection after many births of practice, he attains the supreme goal.
So Krishna is saying after many births, after many births of serious practice, and after washing away all the contamination in the heart, then a yogi attains Krishna. Similarly, here in 7.19, Krishna is talking about the Gyanis. There it was about the yogis, and now it is about the Gyanis, those who are just pursuing knowledge. He's saying, Bahunam Janmanam Ante. After many births and deaths, one who is actually in knowledge, he surrenders unto me. And he understands that Vasudev, Krishna, is the cause of all causes. And Sa Mahatma, he's saying, is Sudurlabha. So, very interestingly, Krishna is very difficult for the yogis to get Krishna, and it is equally difficult for the Gyanis to get Krishna. So the question for all of you is, if somebody is on the pursuit of knowledge, he is getting knowledge, this book, that book, reading from here, reading from there, this lecture, that lecture. What happens at the end of all knowledge? Any ideas from you? After you have read all the books in the library, what should happen at the end of all knowledge?
Prabhuji, only
Yeah.
to know what is where and how it is done. That's it.
Right. So let's say you come to know that. You
Yeah.
read books on how, you read books on what, you read books on who, and all your questions are answered. Now what?
Prabhuji, I think we should apply.
Okay.
Application.
Right. So imagine if somebody is getting fat with knowledge, just like sometimes we get fat with eating a lot. Now, usually the purpose for eating is not pleasure. Some of us might do that. We eat for pleasure. I like this, that's why I eat it. But what is the main purpose of eating? The main purpose of eating is not to become happy. The main purpose of eating is we have sufficient energy in our body so that we can carry out our duties in life. All of us have some duties in life. All of us have some kartavya. And to do that kartavya, to perform that kartavya, we need energy. And that energy has to come from our food. So we eat, but we eat not to get happy. We eat so that we can work. Similarly, if we are just accumulating knowledge to become experts, to become advisors, to become very so-called knowledgeable people, we can actually become unhealthy, just like somebody who eats, but does not work, does not exercise, becomes fat, becomes unhealthy. Similarly, my dear friends, if we just get knowledge, it can also lead to some obesity of knowledge. What is obesity of knowledge is, we have a lot of knowledge, but we never use that knowledge. It is just like somebody has a lot of vitamins, proteins, carbohydrates, fats in his body. So there is a big storehouse of energy in his body, but he never works. He never works hard for helping himself. He never works hard for helping anybody else. And then we say, what is the use of your energy? What is the use of your strength if you cannot use it for anything good? Similarly, when all of us go through all the books in the library and we get all the knowledge, now we understand everything about everything, but we don't utilize all that knowledge, we don't apply that knowledge, then we also become obese with knowledge. So on the screen, there is a small child who does not have much knowledge. And because the child does not have much knowledge, the child is attracted to superficiality, the child is attracted to beauty of the plant. So the child is spraying the plant. That's how it looks beautiful. Then there is this grown-up lady who also has some kind of spray in her hand and she's also spraying on the leaves of the plant. And then there's another person who's grown up and he has a big spray in his hand and he's also spraying at the leaves of the plant. And then the fourth person, it seems he's not interested in watering the leaves of the plant or the branches of the plant, and he's putting it at the root of the plant. So these are four options. Which one is the best?
Prabhuji, watering the root is the only good way.
Yeah. So the other three options, they might make the plant look beautiful. The other three options might make the plant look very attractive, but actually they will not work. They will not nourish the plant. It is nourished by the root of the plant. So somebody who is in knowledge is understanding that this is the right way to do things. So after going through the process of getting knowledge about how to water plants, how do plants nourish themselves, then this person actually applies that knowledge. Whereas the other three, sometimes it is possible that the little child does not have knowledge, or sometimes it is possible that the grown-up people have knowledge, but they feel that knowledge need not be applied. Finally, what matters is the looks. Finally, what matters is how the plant will look attractive. So sometimes you may have knowledge, sometimes you may not have knowledge, but it is not necessary that you will utilize that knowledge. Some of us, even though we have knowledge, we go for superficiality. We take superficial decisions in our life and we lead our life in a very superficial way. So then sometimes people ask, अरे तुमको इतना सारा ज्ञान है, you know so much, but I never see it applied in your life. That is the story of some people. But somebody, the fourth person who's watering root of the plant, is actually utilizing all the knowledge of the plants in his life. And that's why there is an improper way of utilizing knowledge, and there is a proper way of utilizing knowledge. Improper way of utilizing is knowledge gives you pride. You become obese, you become fat, and that fatness gives you pride, that fatness gives you arrogance. And even though you have knowledge, because you're proud, because you are arrogant, you go for thoughtless inactivity. You don't utilize that knowledge. You're just sitting around giving lectures to people. Anybody comes to you and you say, in the Gita, here it is mentioned like this, in the Gita, here it is mentioned like that. And then that person hears from you and says, okay, my dear friend, you know a lot of shlokas from the Gita. Are you living by these Gita shlokas? Are you practicing this Gita shloka? Then you say, no, I am not practicing it. So then why do you know that? I know so that I can impress people with my knowledge. I know so many so that I can show off to people how much I know. Whereas the proper flow chart should be that when we get knowledge, then we live by that knowledge. We go deeper and we struggle. It's not easy to live by these high principles of the Gita, but nevertheless we undergo all that struggles. And when we are sincerely trying to live by the principles of the Gita, it gives us a deeper understanding. And based on the deeper understanding that we get, we for thoughtful action. It's not just action, but it is thoughtful action. Just like in the beginning of today's class, I was mentioning about how life is made of choices, and we discussed how who will make those wise choices? Somebody who has knowledge. If we don't have knowledge, we won't make those choices. So that's why knowledge should lead to a deeper understanding, and that deeper understanding should lead to thoughtful action. Think before you leap. Don't just leap. And the other extreme is don't just keep thinking and never leap. We have to take decisions in our life. We have to act, but we also have to do it very thoughtfully. And in that way, our life can actually become a success based on the guidance of Lord Krishna. Also compare this, as I mentioned, with 6.45 and 7.3. In 7.3, Krishna mentioned how Manushanam Sahasreshu Kaschid Yatati Siddhe Yatatam api Siddhanam Kaschid Mam Veti Tatvatah. What he mentioned in 6.45 is somebody who knows Krishna is very rare. Same thing he spoke in 7.3. And again, this current shloka, Krishna again spoke it. Whereas if you compare it with 7.1, then Krishna 7.1 says, Maya Saktamana Partha Yogam Yunjanmadashraya Asamshayam Samagram Mam Yatha Gyasasi Tashunu. If you want to know me, just sit and listen from me. And those who don't sit and listen from Krishna or his representatives, they want to perform yoga to understand Krishna. They want to read books to understand Krishna. Krishna is saying it's very difficult. It's very difficult to know me through indirect means. And it's very, very easy to know me by direct means. So that is the whole challenge for all of us. Now, contrastingly, there is a big contrast. Till now, Krishna was speaking 7.15, 7.16, 7.17, 7.18. He glorified devotees. He said they are so udar, they are so magnanimous. And now he's going to give us a contrast. Please stay tuned. Kamaistaistairhitagyanaha prapadyante anya devataha tam tam niyamasthaya prakritya niyata swaya. Now he's giving us the other side of life. Those whose intelligence has been stolen by material desires, temporary desires, surrender unto devatas, surrender unto demigods, and follow the particular rules and regulations of worship according to their own natures. Prakritya niyatah swaya. So those who want immediate benefits, they want certain benefits in their life. They don't want God. They want benefits of God. Then Krishna is saying, these kind of people, it seems that their knowledge has been stolen away by material desires. And such people, they don't surrender to me, they surrender to the Devatas. So after speaking so many advantages of surrendering to Krishna, Krishna spoke how you can cross over the material ocean of birth and death simply by surrendering to Krishna. And even if you ask something from Krishna, Krishna says, you are magnanimous because you are giving me an opportunity to form a relationship with you. And so many nice things Krishna spoke about those who take shelter of Krishna. But he says, still, there are some people who don't take shelter of me, they take shelter of the Devatas. Why? Because they are interested in something temporary. So why Krishna is using these words, intelligence is stolen? Because these people, they don't understand how can they be satisfied permanently by things that are temporary. And why those things are temporary? Because the Devatas themselves are temporary, because that is a post. It's like in our country, a government is formed for 5 years maximum. The most stable government is there only for 5 years, and after 5 years there are Lok Sabha elections, and again the government has to be formed. Even if it is the most stable government, you can't say all the time when our government was in power we never took any wrong decision, and look at the people, everyone is happy with us. No, the maximum tenure of the most successful government is 5 years. They can be re-elected, they can be re-elected 4 times, 5 times, but election has to happen, so the tenure is fixed. Similarly, the Devatas are part of the universal government and their tenure is fixed. It is for the period of 1 Manu or 71 Chatur Yugas. So 1 Chatur Yuga is 1 Satya Yuga, 1 Treta Yuga, 1 Dwapar Yuga and 1 Kali Yuga. And this is called 1 Divya Yuga or 1 Chatur Yuga or 1 Mahayuga. And 71 such Mahayugas is the life duration of a set of the Devatas. After every Manu changes, the entire set of the ministers, the universal ministers, they change. That's how it is. It's mentioned in the Vedic literature, and that's why those who themselves are temporary, their gifts will also be temporary. And why would an eternal living entity ever be satisfied with something that is temporary? So somebody who understands this never worships the Devata something temporary. He worships Krishna because Krishna is permanent, and Krishna can give us something permanent, something that actually genuinely satisfies us. And that's why Krishna is saying, but still there are some people who are like that. Now, how do these devotees of the Devatas worship the Devatas? Yo yo yam yam tanum bhaktah shraddhayarchitumicchati tasya tasya chalam shraddham tam eva vidadhamyaham. I am in everyone's heart, the Paramatma. I am situated in everyone's heart. As soon as one desires to worship some Devata, I make his faith steady so that he can devote himself to that particular deity. Even when we want to worship all the Devatas, faith to worship the Devatas comes from Krishna. Can you imagine what kind of a person Krishna is? He has given us the choice. He has made himself available to Duryodhan and Arjuna both. Now it is up to us what we choose in our life. Since Krishna is in everyone's heart, which is the seat of faith, without his help we cannot even develop firm faith for any Devata. So all those worshippers of Siddhivinayak, all those worshippers of Babulnath, all those worshippers of Ma Amba, actually even they receive help from Krishna. Because as per the Gita, Krishna is saying, if I don't give them that faith, then they will never have achala shraddha, he said. Tasya achalam shraddham. Achala means fixed faith. So Krishna gives those people fixed faith in the Devatas. Lessons for us? The lessons is, Krishna is very non-envious person. Krishna does not feel, oh, why is this person worshipping the Devatas? Why is this person not worshipping me? because Krishna understands the devatas are my representatives for the temporary material world. It is Krishna, Vishnu, who has appointed all these devatas in their posts to do all the universal administration. So Krishna does not have any envy for all the devatas. Krishna is non-competitive. There is no competition with someone temporarily controlling the temporary. The devatas themselves temporary, and they are controlling the temporary departments of this temporary material world. Krishna does not have any competitive spirit with them. It is just a temporary government. And Krishna is non-possessive. Krishna has no politics. अरे मेरा पार्टी छोड़ के कहाँ चला गया ये आदमी, मेरे मंदिर में पहले आता था, अभी दूसरे मंदिर में जाता है, अभी इसको शाप दूंगा मैं. We should never ever fear that if I worship some devata, then Krishna will become angry on me. Krishna will not become angry on me, but it is not good for us, because we will only keep receiving something that is temporary in this world. We will never ever receive something that is permanent from the temporary devata. सतया श्रद्धया युक्त तस्याराधनमीहते लभते च ततः कामान मय्यैव विहितान हितान. Endowed with such a faith, he endeavors a particular devata and obtains his desires. But in actuality, these benefits are bestowed by me alone. As I mentioned to you, the devatas, they are basically ministers. Education minister does not manufacture education. Education minister distributes education. The water minister, the manufacture water, minister distributes water. Electricity minister does not manufacture electricity. Electricity minister distributes electricity. Coal minister does not manufacture coal. Coal minister distributes coal. So all these universal devatas, they do not manufacture anything of these substances throughout the world. So an example is, there is a go down, and from the go down a shop is filled, and then from the shop a consumer can pick up. So similarly, it is Lord Vishnu who is the supplier of everything. So different devatas, they are in charge of different departments. Saraswati is in charge of education. Indra is in charge of all the water management. He controls rains. Recently we celebrated Govardhan Puja, and in that whole story, Indra's rains play a major part. Brahmaji is in charge of the creation of this material world. Durga ji is in charge of making sure that the right people only can escape from this material world. And Ganesh ji is in charge of Vigna Harta. So while doing anything in the material world, if there is any Vigna, difficulty, then we can approach Ganesh ji to remove those difficulties. So all of them have one department, but it is that they control only that one department. It is not that they have everything, whereas the warehouse, the godown, has everything. So Lord Vishnu actually supplies all these demigods with the power, with the post, with the necessary skills, and with the necessary shraddha in the heart of the devotee of all these devatas, by which innumerable living entities they receive. So the warehouse, the shop, and the consumer are there, and unless the godown is filled up, unless the warehouse is filled, the shop will not get filled up. And if the shop is not filled up, then the consumer does not get. But an intelligent consumer understands not necessary to go to the shop, because shop sometimes is costly. You can go directly to the warehouse, and Krishna is saying, even if you go to the shop, actually the shop is also my facility. It's not that the shop is competing with the godown. The shop is also a facility of the warehouse, but if you go directly to the warehouse, then you get something at a very low cost. And that is something that Krishna is advising, that don't form a relationship with somebody temporary in this world, form a relationship with me. 7.3, last shloka for discussion today. Antavattu phalam tesham tadbhavati alpamedhasam devan devaya joyanti madbhakta yanti ma. Men of small intelligence worship the devatas, and their fruits are limited and temporary. Those who worship the demigods go to the planets of the demigods, but my devotees ultimately reach my supreme planet. So whatever we choose in life, go there. If we choose to worship the devatas, then our intelligence is small because we are interested only in temporary things, and the fruits of what we get is also temporary. And if we worship the devatas, we go to the planets of the devatas. The devatas stay in Swarga Loka, and we can go to the Swarga Loka where everything is nice, but of course, the Swarga Loka is in the material world. And because the Swarga Loka is in the material world, it is a temporary place. Whereas those who worship Krishna, my dear friends, Krishna is saying, they will come to me. They will come to me. And where does Krishna stay? Krishna does not stay in the material world. Krishna stays in the spiritual world. He stays in Vaikuntha. So he says, Mad Bhakta Yanti Mamapi. And Devan Deva Yajo Yanti. So भगवान के भक्त होते हैं और देवताओं के पुजारी होते हैं. देवताओं के भक्त नहीं होते. देव यजो बोलते हैं भगवान. Krishna is saying Deva Yajo. He is not saying Deva Bhakta. Those who are worshipping the devatas for getting something from the devatas, they are not bhaktas. Because bhaktas never want anything from Krishna. Bhaktas just want to give and give and give to Krishna because they know Krishna has already given us a lot. So those who worship devatas, they attain the devatas, and those who worship Krishna, they attain Krishna. So that's why all the saintly people in the world, they keep telling us, please worship Krishna, please worship Vishnu, please worship Narayan. Don't worship the devatas. Sometimes they are important, sometimes they are necessary for doing some temporary things in this world. But our eternal, permanent relationship, a relationship that will give us satisfaction, is only with Lord Krishna. Okay, so I'll stop here. Anybody has any questions? Then we can take a few questions.
Prabhuji, I have a question.
Yes.
This is about the choices in the life we make, as it is discussed that it depends on us to make the life choices, right? But
Yes.
do our past life karmas have any influence on the choices we make in this life?
Our past life karmas do not have an influence on the choices we make, but our past life karmas will have influences on the environment that is always around us, that is formed around us when we will make those choices. So if I have associated with a certain kind of people in my past, maybe in this life, the previous life, then I'm born in a particular family, I have a particular set of friends, I have a particular type of intelligence and all that. But the power to choose is always independent of karma. I can always choose the right, no matter how many people tell me and force me and influence me to go for the wrong choice. 100 people can tell me, Nandulal Das, select this, select this, select this, select this. And at the end of it, I listen to all of them. And at the end of it, I can say, wait a minute. Finally, I am supposed to go through the consequences of my choice. If I make a wrong choice based on your advice, and if I suffer the consequences of that bad choice, will you come and help me? Try asking those people who advise you. Try asking those people who advise you, you want me to make a particular choice in my life. If that choice is a good choice, I will share the benefits of that good choice with you. But before you want me to make that choice, I also want a confirmation from you if the choice that you are asking me to do is a wrong choice, and if I suffer because of that wrong choice, I am faced with a lot of pain in my life because of that wrong choice, will you also take part in that suffering? I can assure you, people say, if benefits come, please do send the benefits. But if trouble comes, finally it's you. You made the choice. We advised you. You do that choice, but finally you made the choice. So always remember, people will tell us to do this, people will tell us to do that, but the consequences of that choice nobody wants. Now, Valmiki Rishi, he was before Ratnakar. And Ratnakar was a hunter. Ratnakar was a dacoit. So one time he met Narad Muni and he attacked Narad Muni. And Narad Muni told him, well, you attacked me, I don't have anything except advice. So he said, I'm going to kill you. He said, okay, that's not a problem. You kill me. I don't have any problem with that. But why do you do all this? So he said, because I want to please my relatives. I want to please my family members. They want so many things from me. and to please him I'm doing this. So he told, see, I'm available here. I'm not going to go anywhere. Just go to those people who are asking you so many things and being forced by those demands. You are now engaging in killing people, looting people, cheating people. Just go to them and ask them all the sins that will come into your life because of all this looting, cheating, and committing dacoitry. Will those people also accept not only the benefits of looting people and cheating people, will they also accept the sins, the pain, the suffering that will come in your life because of that? He went and asked, they said, never ever. आप डिसीजन ले रहे हैं, जो गलत उसके परिणाम होंगे वो आप भुगतना, हम नहीं भुगतेंगे वो परिणाम. And Ratnakar understood that I am doing so many wrong activities for people who don't want the fruits of those activities. So coming back to the point, coming back to your question, finally it is we who will suffer if we make the wrong choices, and finally it is we who will benefit if we make the right choices. So let us say we have a sacred duty towards ourselves, that we need to understand the knowledge that is there in the Gita in a deep way. To consult, we have to go deeper into this and have to understand in a particular situation what is the right thing to do. There can be any blanket advice for all the situations in your life. 2020 in your life is very different from 2019 in your own life, and 2021 is going to be different in your life. Last year, when we were having these programs in SVS Hall, there was no question of social distancing and there was no question of stopping that program ever. People, the organizers, Nagesh Prabhu, and the other, Vasundhara Mataji, Srilekha Mataji, me, we never thought that we'll have all these WebEx classes and I'll make a PPT. I never made so many PPTs in my whole life. The kind of PPTs I'm making, because I understand we are doing these online classes, it's very difficult to pass on the expressions on online classes. Do you remember, Mataji, you were used to attend those classes last year also. Do you remember me making any PPTs? Abha Mataji? Sometimes I made, but not these kind of detailed slides. So I never thought I'll make all this, but then I made a choice that if the program has to continue, then I need to make slides, because certain things, when we are facing each other, when we are sitting close to each other, then you can see my face and I can emphasize certain points. But with so much distance between the attendees and myself, I have to put it on the screen in the form of different pictures that give the message properly. So 2019 was very different, 2020 is very different, and I can assure you 2021 is also going to be very different. So slowly we have to develop the intelligence based on the guidance and the knowledge that is there in the Gita. What are the parameters which are important parameters when taking decisions in our life? Should we give importance to short-term parameters? Should we give importance to long-term parameters? And whenever we are taking a decision, always is it necessary to plan 20 years ahead? Or always when we are taking a decision in our life, is it necessary to take a decision based on 2 years, based on 2 months? I can tell you very safely, certain decisions in our life we need to take in a very short-term way, and certain decisions in our life we have to take in a very long-term way. So which decision should be based on short-term parameters? Which decision should be based on long-term parameters? Which decision should be based on a combination of short-term and long-term parameters? This is the art of studying the Gita. This is the art of learning the Gita. And in this way, when we go deeper into the Gita, in this way, when we are actually participating in the discussions, when we are actually going, what does this shloka mean to me? Or Krishna is telling to Arjun in a particular way, but what does this shloka mean to me in my life today? That is when the Bhagavad Gita will come out alive in your own life. And that is the day when you will experience Lord Krishna standing right next to you and speaking a version of the Gita to you. Krishna spoke the Gita to the sun god, and then Krishna spoke the Gita to Arjun, and the essence was the same. The instructions were different. Krishna never told the sun god to get up and fight, because there was no fight going on for the sun god. But for Arjun, he said, get up and fight. Similarly, when Krishna speaks the Bhagavad Gita to you and me, the essence will remain the same, but Krishna may not ask us to get up and fight, because we are not warriors. So Krishna is ready to speak the Bhagavad Gita to you. Krishna is ready to speak the Bhagavad Gita to all those who are attending these classes. But we just need to get into the mood of Arjun properly and get to actually understand what does this shloka mean to me in my life. So yes, people will advise us and people will influence us and people will, in one sense, in a very unconscious way, force us. But finally, always remember, the power to choose is yours. There were 100 Kauravas and only 5 Pandavas, but the Pandavas chose Krishna. I'll stop here. You were saying something.
Yeah, sorry. I was saying, suppose someone makes a choice, but then how is that person supposed to repay the karmas in the past life?
See, that is coming in your life is part of the repayment of karma that you did previously. I took certain decisions in my past life. I took certain decisions when I was 20 years old. And the fruit of those decisions is what is happening to me when I'm 40 years old now. Right now in my life, certain situations are coming. What is that? That is a repayment of my karma. I took certain decisions in my past life. What is happening in my life today is a repayment of that karma. But I always have a choice to respond to whatever is happening in my life today. What I spoke in 2015 has resulted in a certain situation in my life in 2020. But how I respond to that situation that has come into my life in 2020 is not predetermined. So how I respond to the situation that is coming in my life in 2020 will determine what happens in my life in 2025. In 2020, I spoke arrogantly with somebody, and that person is still, even today, really upset with me. So that situation where somebody is upset with me is a result of my behavior with that person in 2015. But today, when that person is upset with me, can I go and fall at that person's feet and say, I'm really sorry for what happened in 2015. Please forgive me. It all happened in a fit of rage. I was really angry that day because of some other situation and I downpoured all that anger on you. I'm really very sorry. I catch your feet. I'm really sorry. That person can, that hatred that that person has for me based on what I spoke to that person in 2015 can completely be destroyed in a few moments in 2020, and 2021 can be the beginning of a very healthy relationship with that person. Case number 2, I spoke something very angrily to some person in 2015. Today he has a lot of anger against me, and because he has anger against me, he speaks improperly with me, and because he speaks improperly with me, I also speak improperly with him. So what will happen in case 2? In case 2, the situation will worsen. So what happened in 2015 is determining what happens in 2020, but how I respond, how I choose to respond in 2020 determines what happens in 2021. If I respond in a very nice way in 2021, that person can be a good friend of mine. And if I respond in an improper way in 2021, our hatred will reach new limits. It will go higher and higher. Mataji, is it okay? Did you get it?
Yes, Prabhuji. And another question, but I think maybe I can WhatsApp you that because it's almost 8:50. It's fine.
If you think it will benefit others, then you can ask right now because so many others are also listening.
Okay. My another question was, so many people say that Hinduism is not a religion, as I had said. It is a way of life. But our scriptures, sadhus, our monks in the past, they were so gnani, what we call is so knowledgeable. And they have written so many traditions, they have created so many rituals which always have a scientific reasoning, I believe. But then are they not Hindu?
Okay, so this whole thing about Hinduism being a religion, try to understand it. When somebody says Hinduism is not a religion, what they're saying is, religion is a set of beliefs, is a set of rituals, is a that were created by certain prophets. If you take any other religion, can you name a few religions other than Hinduism?
Christianity, Judaism.
Unable to hear you, Mataji, one at a time.
Yeah, there is this what to say? Islam is there.
Oh, stop.
Christianity.
Stop. Islam, do you know that Islam was started by one person and it was started at a particular date?
Maybe that Prophet
Yes,
Muhammad, but date I'm
I
not
know.
sure. I don't know the date.
Prophet Muhammad, roughly 800 AD.
Yeah.
Yeah, roughly 1200 years back. Okay. Any other religion?
Christianity.
Christianity was started by Jesus, and what we say 2000 AD is basically after the disappearance of Jesus. So 2000 years back, there was a person called Jesus and Jesus Christ. So those who follow his teachings are called Christians. Any other religion?
Judaism.
Judaism. Judaism was by this person called Moses. Yes, he is before Christ. Any other religion?
I don't know anything beyond this. Prabhuji.
There is Buddhism, Mataji. Buddhism.
Buddhism, Jainism, but
So
mainly
Buddhism,
majority what we
I
follow is
understand. I understand. I'm
yeah.
saying Buddhism has a date, right? Buddha, there was a person called Lord Buddha. So Buddhism, we know the person and we know the date. Christianity, we know the person, we know the date. Islam, we know the date and we know the. Now Hinduism, who started it, Mataji? Who is the prophet of Hinduism? Yeah, I'm asking her. I'm trying to
Yeah.
bring her to this point. Religions in this world, they have a date. They have a person.
Yeah.
But for Hinduism, there is no date and there is no person. Yes, it means in that sense, it was not begun on a particular day. It was not something invented by man, and that's why people say that it is not a religion; it is a way of life. There were some flaws in society before Christ, before Jesus. Jesus saw that outside the temples there were shops. This is from Jesus' life. He saw there were shops that were selling, in the pre-Jesus era. Subhashji, you need to mute yourself.
Yes.
In the pre-Jesus era, if you did something wrong, if you did some sinful activity, then you would go to the temple and you would ask for forgiveness. So when Jesus went to one such temple, then he saw that people as shopkeepers were selling these kind of indulgences. This is called an indulgence. I indulge in some sinful activity and then I go to the temple and I pay some money to get free from that sinful activity. So Jesus was so shocked that outside the temple there were shops like that and they were selling. Do you want to do this sinful activity? You come to us, you purchase that indulgence from us, and by purchasing that indulgence from us, you can engage in that sinful activity. So in the name of religion, which is supposed to lower the sinful activity, in that situation, people were indulging in more and more sinful activities. So Jesus, he went to those shops and he just created a big mess of those shops, and he said, God does not want to do business with people saying that you pay me money and you can indulge in sinful activity. And that's why, Jesus in one sense is a social reformer. He reformed the situation, and then those who started following him, have read the life of Jesus, the Roman emperors wanted to kill him because he was creating a new followership. And that's point of time the soldiers came and put him on a cross. Why did they put him on a cross? They told him, don't preach your religion. You are preaching purity. And we don't want this purity to be preached. We want people to stay in illusion. We want people to come to the temple and give us money, and so that they can purchase the power to commit some sinful activity and all that. Now in Hinduism, there is no such thing. So Hinduism is not something that was created on a particular date and it was started by one particular person. That's why they say that Hinduism is not a religion. But that does not mean that it is not bona fide. You are saying something that we have so many sadhus and we have so many saints and we have so many sages. And does it mean that they are not Hindus? They are not Hindus. The point, they are not Hindus. They are practicing the original principles of life created by God. If you check out chapter 3 of the Gita, then in one particular shloka, Krishna says, at the beginning of creation, I gave all the principles to the human beings. Please check out the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3. I'll put it on the group. But Krishna is saying, when the universe was created, when this world was created, I also gave the laws by which you can exist in a very happy way in this universe. Just like you purchase a washing machine, and along with the washing machine comes a set of instructions, the manual. If you refer to the manual, then the washing machine runs very nicely. Similarly, Krishna gave to us this material world, and he also gave us a set of instructions to live by. So all the sadhus, the sages, and the saints who lived by those principles, they are what we call today as Hindus. And why are they happy? Because they are living by the principles of God. Those who happy. So they never practiced a particular religion in that sense. Religion is something that is started by a human being. Whereas all the sadhus and the sages and all the society at the time of Lord Ramchandra, at the society at the time of Lord Narsimha, Lord Vishnu, Lord Matsya, Varaha Avatar and all that, they are simply following the rules made by the Supreme Lord at the beginning of creation. Whatever Lord Brahma told, this is how we have to live, they just lived by that. They never thought of any reformation. They never thought that what God has given has to be changed. So what they started is called a religion, and our sadhus, what Jesus started is called a religion, what Muhammad started is called a religion, what Lord Buddha started is called a religion. But Hinduism is not called a religion because no person started it. It is the normal way of life. Be grateful to the Supreme Lord who has given us everything, even before we asked it. So that is called Hinduism. Okay, Mataji, Hare Krishna.
Yes, Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak. Thank you to
Hare
all
Krishna, Prabhuji.
for
Thank
coming
Hare
together
Krishna.
every Thursday and giving me an opportunity to speak on the Bhagavad Gita. Hare Krishna. Jai
Thank you.
Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.